Preaching is the most exciting aspect of ministry for me. One professor of preaching defined preaching as spoken communication of divine truth by a dedicated spirit with a view toward persuasion. Preaching, therefore, for me, begins with Scripture, examining Scripture for God's thoughts on life, and then finding a structure that will communicate those thoughts in a way that I hope people will adopt for daily living. I tend to be exclusively almost an expository preacher with the thought and outline arising out of the text. What I enjoy most in preaching is examining a scripture from a number of characters that may be in the text and selecting one character. This helps me preach scriptures on days like Good Friday and Easter and Christmas from different points of view. One Good Friday, for example, the sermon was on the text, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And the idea was a question. God, are you against me too? Another was Jesus dying on the cross for us, and the idea was trading a good life for a bad. One sermon looked at the repentant thief who told the other thief to leave Jesus alone. And the idea was, leave Jesus alone. The thief said, leave Jesus alone, acknowledging Jesus' innocent and their guilt. Those crucifying Jesus said, leave Jesus alone, so as to keep up the pain and the humiliation. His mother expressed a mother's love, saying, leave Jesus alone, because she wanted them to stop hurting her son. And God said, leave Jesus alone, because Jesus was fulfilling his purpose on the cross. And one Good Friday, I approached the crucifixion as a reporter, reporting the events of the day. I look for ways to be creative without sacrificing the meaning of the text. That aspect of preaching is fun, and I hope that keeps those days fresh without, again, sacrificing the central meaning. Perhaps most challenging is preaching in times of conflict or change. In those times, I try to be careful with my words so as not to make the issue worse. Yet, when it is necessary to address the issue, I do so with care, and I must admit that I do that with varying degrees of success. I have friends, and I know of persons who are great preachers. Their content and theology are solid. They have methods of preaching that I try to learn from. I like to listen to sermons of those preachers online, and if they're anywhere close, I go to worship with them. I also invite good preachers to St. Paul. Their preaching helps me, and I always keep myself as a listener and not as a preacher on the sideline thinking about what I would say. I also like to go to preaching conferences. I've attended the Festival of Homiletics several times. The Convocation of Pastors of African American United Methodist Churches is always worth my time. I also attended other preaching conferences that may not have been as well run, but they did have some good preachers, and that was worth it. Guarding my time for prayer and preparation is important. Since preaching is not the only thing I do, pastoral functions can and do find their way into my time for sermon preparation. In some ways, getting ready to preach weekly is stressful. I have an outline ready for the bulletin by Friday and then write out the sermon completely. Well, I enjoy preaching, and I think that's going to be the aspect of ministry I will miss the most after retirement. I'm Donald Jenkins, and I'm pastor of St. Paul United Methodist Church, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.